Preacher 1138. I wanted to get your thoughts on something in Ben and Michael's Infiltrating Scientology videos. First, I was surprised that Ben's auditor knew about Xenu. I was under the impression that it's not likely that an OT3 or above would be working in a Class 5 org. Am I mistaken about this? If so, in what way? Second, since it appears Ben got busted for having mentioned Xenu, what do you think would have happened if nobody who was in the LA org had gotten to OT3? Would Ben have been found out eventually for knowing about Xenu? If so, based on your own knowledge, what is the most likely way he would have been found out if he hadn't said Xenu to an OT? Third question. Do you know if Scientology staff are given a list of buzzwords and told to report anyone who utters certain words or phrases? Last question. You said on your show that the church must really be going downhill since they chased Ben into a parking lot over $15, since you said when you were on staff you wouldn't chase anybody down for less than $5,000. Was that based off of Hubbard's policy? Were you told only to go after someone if the money amount is $5,000 or more? Or was that just general practice in the church when you were in? Okay, man. Well, you're asking for a 4 for 1, and this time I'm actually going to deliver because of this special episode. So let's get to it. All right, first off, you said you were surprised that Ben's auditor was OT3 and knew about Xenu. Don't be. There are Scientologists of all levels on staff at Class 5 orgs, and Class 5 orgs, of course, are what I've been calling from day one the city-level churches. Now, Los Angeles, or you guys might know or not know, is staffed exclusively by Sea Org members now. It wasn't always that way, but it is now. So there's even, not a higher chance, but it's just kind of interesting that that's the Los Angeles Church of Scientology is presented within the world of Scientology as the model Class 5 org in the world. It's supposed to be the epitome of what a city-level Scientology church is. It's supposed to operate on the most ruthless application of the policy, standard tech, delivering exactly as Hubbard said. That is what LA org is supposed to be. And people are sent from all over the world to go to LA org to train there now. They have training programs that have been going on for years there where they're working over Scientology executives and staff members and stuff. So it's kind of this training ground and pilot ground for stuff. Now, though, it's manned up only by Sea Org members, which immediately makes it not the model Class 5 org of the world because the rest of the orgs aren't manned by Sea Org members. And there is a big difference between a Sea Org member and a regular Scientology staff member in terms of the levels of dedication, commitment, discipline, the make it go right attitude and all of that. So it's kind of funny that they did that. Now, as far as the OT levels go, there is always actually supposed to be at least one person who is OT3 or above in every Church of Scientology in the world. And the reason for that is because, you guys might find this interesting. So there is a position in a Scientology org called the Senior Case Supervisor, or Senior CS. This guy or girl is the top technically trained person in the org. They're supposed to be Class 8 as an auditor. And if you pull up that grade chart or the Bridge to Total Freedom, that chart that they have, and you see the training on one side and the auditing on the other, and then we talk all about the auditing, but the training side I've talked about in videos, so you can go check that out. And the Class 8 course is supposed to be the model epitome of a standard tech auditor and case supervisor. In other words, it's the highest level you can go as a public person or as a staff member in Scientology training. That Class 8 is as high as it goes. There are no public or staff members who train on Class 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are the next levels above Class 8. So Class 8 is as high as it goes if you're a staff member. And the senior case supervisor is supposed to be a Class 8. Hubbard mandated this all the way back from when he first invented Class 8 in 1968. It's when he first gave the first class on the Class 8 course back on the ship. So there's always supposed to be somebody in the org who will recognize Xenu, body thetans, or any of the stuff about the OT levels, because a Class 8 has to be OT3. right? They have to be. You cannot do the Class 8 course if you are not OT3. Because half the story about Xenu and his band of renegades and all the rest is covered on the Class 8 course, in the lectures on that course. There's a whole bunch more information about Xenu and stuff. There's a lecture online that you can look up on YouTube called Assists. It's a confidential lecture from the Class 8 course where he talks all about Xenu and body thetans and stuff. And that's not something that's not a lecture that people who do the OT3 level listen to. You only listen to it on the Class 8 course. That's the only place in Scientology where you have access to that information. Even if you've done OT3, you can't walk into the Class 8 course room and say, well, I want to read all the stuff. They won't let you. You got to get to Class 8 to read that stuff. So that's kind of interesting. And but it also tells you that there should, since every single org is supposed to have a Class 8 case supervisor, that should handle the point of, hey, what happens if Xenu comes up, okay? And it's an unusual enough thing. If some person, any person, walks into a Scientology org, goes into an auditing session like Ben did, and talks to their auditor about stuff they've read online, the auditor is probably going to write it all down, whether that auditor is OT or not. So they might not know anything about Xenu, never heard of it, never heard of body thetans, never heard about any of that stuff, never watched South Park. But here's somebody walking in, downloading about it, and they're going to write it down as part of the auditing session, part of the worksheets. And that's going to go to the case supervisor. And if the case supervisor's not OT, he might send it to the senior case supervisor who is OT. You see, and this is how this sort of thing would be found out about. Now, in the case of Ben's auditor was OT3. Lots of auditors are OTs. People who get up to OT, one, they don't really have a whole lot else to do except train in Scientology, so they become auditors. And two, a lot of people in Scientology want to become auditors because they think that that's the best way as a Scientologist to help other people. According to L. Ron Hubbard, it's the only way to help other people. So there's lots and lots of OTs who get auditor training and then join staff or join the Sea Org. And in the case of Ben's auditor, that's who she was, right? She's OT, she's trained auditor, and a lot of executives are OTs. Miscavige was on a big push for years, still is, to get the OTs onto staff specifically, right? They didn't used to put as much attention on that kind of thing. But ever since the whole ideal org thing came about, they have been gung-ho about getting OT8s to join staff and be the executive directors or the senior executives of the orgs. So you generally have at least 1, 2, 3, 4 OTs in almost any organization anywhere in the world. Even if they're not holding the senior executive positions or the senior case supervisor positions, they're still Scientologists who are going up the bridge, and eventually they get to OT, and that's how that goes. Okay, so you then ask about Ben getting busted for having mentioned Xenu. What would have happened if nobody was had gotten to OT3? Well, that's an impossible situation, especially on a Sea Org base. There's just no way that somebody in the LA org isn't going to have a heads up on that, or is that they're going to have a whole org full of no OTs. That's just, I think I've shown now that just doesn't really happen. But had it happened, and according to your question, what's the most likely way he would have been found out if he hadn't said Xenu? Well, Ben and Mike are pretty goofy guys, right? And they were in character and that sort of thing, but they were also being very unusual as Scientologists, right? They were very gung-ho. They wanted to be part of everything. They wanted to do things. They were, kind of in there that was reflected by the recruiter. That was a very telling episode when that recruiter, the Sea Org recruiter Mac, was talking to Ben and saying how unusual he was and how gung-ho he was and how, okay, I'll let you in on the, how we really think as opposed to what we tell people. That was a very telling conversation. If anybody in that whole exercise is going to get busted, The registrar who took the money, right? The money that he said was stolen, that person's going to get in a lot of trouble too. But yeah, that Mac's going to get in a lot of trouble because he, opened up about how they really think, and it made it look like a bunch of idiots, conspiracy theory morons, and because that's what Scientologists are when it comes to that. So they were going to get busted at some point, no matter what they did, just because of their attitude, right? Because they were such unicorns in the org. They were there. They were excited about it. That's an unusual thing. So there could have been lots and lots of other ways, and of course, always wearing those glasses, and then that one guy got suspicious. I was a little surprised people didn't get more suspicious earlier, actually. Okay, so there would have been lots of ways he could have been caught. And then third question, do Scientology staff get lists of buzzwords? Not that I'm aware of. I was never given anything like that in all the years I was in. And there is no way at all, ever, that Scientology staff or public are ever going to be told OT words as a caution or warning. That would just be absolutely nuts in Scientology, right? 27 years in, I never once heard the word Xenu uttered by a Scientologist under any circumstances ever. And I did see people who had accidentally let slip certain things in not around me, but I saw reports. And if they let any little thing slip, even to another OT in a situation that wasn't completely confidential, they'd get reported on and they'd get busted, right? I cannot stress how seriously Scientology takes their own dogma on the confidential materials. I think people don't really believe me on this or something, but they could not take it more seriously. And they lock those materials down with a security system that it's an impressive level of security. There's no one ever who's going to just walk into an org now and walk out with those materials. It's impossible. The doors of the buildings literally lock if any of those confidential packs make it out of the course room, much less down the hall into the elevator. They're barcoded and scanned and all this other stuff. So they take that stuff really seriously, right? So they are not about to issue a set of OT words or symbols or anything like that to give people a heads up that somebody's coming in, talking OT stuff, right? I think enough Scientologists on the front lines have now heard enough stuff from people walking by that they have some kind of shore story or cover story worked out within the world of Scientology for these words and for these concepts. Basically, when I was in, the cover story was, all of that is a lie. None of that is on the OT levels. Anything you're seeing on the internet is total horseshit. It's twisted, it's messed up, it's taken out of context. You're not getting the straight stuff, and you shouldn't even be looking at that stuff. In fact, if you do look at that stuff, you're not going to get on the OT levels anyway, so you better knock it off, right? I mean, that's the attitude in Scientology about that stuff. They're not walking around on eggshells about it. They are very firmly in a position where they say, look, we're the ones who hold the keys to the kingdom, and if you want in, you're going to cooperate with every single thing we tell you, and if you don't like that, there's the door. That's their attitude about it, right? They do not care what you have to say or think about L. Ron Hubbard's OT materials, right? They are the written, enlightened truth as, according to L. Ron Hubbard, and there isn't any other, option or choice about it. Okay, and then finally you said, the $5,000 thing. That was a joke. Okay, so Ben says that he got chased out into the parking lot for $15. I thought that was pretty cheesy. I mean, I literally never did see anybody chase somebody into a parking lot for a $15 course pack or book. I never did. Ben and Mike were right because they said in the video, well, we think she was doing that not for the $15, but because she wanted us on board so much. And she was really, she thought that us doing Scientology would save our lives, and she wanted that for us. And that's true. That's totally true. I was being facetious when I said I would never chase anybody out to a parking lot for less than $5,000. I was just making a joke. I chase people out of the parking lot for all kinds of amounts of money and recruitment purposes and all kinds of things, right? And really the accurate thing there, the accurate statement there is that the we'll chase people wherever we need to as Scientologists or Sea Org members because we are so dedicated to getting that person the truth. Okay, so I was just trying to make light of that, and I guess a couple people misunderstood what I meant there. So, okay, you got 4 for 1. I hope you're happy, and I hope we've kicked this off to a good start. Let's get to the next question.